Okay, so tonight what I want to do is talk about why quarantine is not fun, using some cool stuff in economics to show us or to show different ways of thinking about this problem. Okay, now before I begin, I want to make very clear this is not an argument for ending quarantine. This is not an argument for any of that stuff. This is just trying to understand why several people, myself included, are perhaps less happy now than we were prior to quarantine. Okay? So, in microeconomics, we have this model that we call the production possibilities frontier. You might know it as the production possibilities curve, uh, or just the PPF for short, because no one likes to write all this out. And the way we always kind of draw it is, you've got two goods, X and Y, that can be produced. And then we have a PPF curve that is concave, it bends down, it looks like that. And what this thing says is that any point, along this curve or even underneath the curve, frankly, are things that are possible, right? You and I, like, we could do this ourselves. So this is, let's say this is just for me. So this is for Dave. Okay. And, we say, hey, Dave, you could produce, some amount of X, some amount of Y. If you are on your production possibilities frontier, if you want to produce more Y, then you're going to have to give up producing some amount of X. And then, we have some other arguments like, hey, you can't be at any point beyond, the production possibilities frontier. It'd be great if you could, but you can't. Okay. And so, whoops, don't know why I switched to that. Okay. And so normally, we'll do some analysis and we'll have indifference curves, which are convex to the origin because these are both goods. Okay. And, we can find some standard amount or some standard analysis that tells us, hey, if you want to maximize your happiness, you should produce, this amount of Y and this amount of X. And then, like, you'll be as happy as you can possibly be in your own, little world where you are producing, only for yourself. And that's great. Usually we do this in the context of, like, Robinson Crusoe living on his island, or more modern, we might do like Tom Hanks on his island in the movie Castaway, right, where he's got, fish and coconuts, right? And so, like, if Tom Hanks, wants to catch more fish, he's gonna have to give up some coconuts, or vice versa, either one. Okay? And this is sort of the canonical model of production, and we can throw trade in here as well pretty easily. Okay, so we can say, hey, here's a production possibilities frontier, two goods, X and Y. We can say, through some clever stuff that I'm going to kind of gloss over for brevity's sake, we can say, this right here might be your productive optima. So you produce, some amount of Y and maybe a little bit of X, just because you do. But then you can trade along sort of this red line, which is like a relative price function or a relative price line. And you can actually get to a higher indifference curve than you could, by yourself. So by yourself, you might be producing and consuming here. So this could be like I1. But because you can specialize in producing, right here, you can then trade along this relative price line and reach this point here where you actually get to consume X2 and Y2, right? And then notice that this is also greater in both X and Y than you could achieve, by yourself, right? So if you were living on your own by yourself, you would be stuck, here. But because you can trade with others, you get to consume all the way out there, which is beyond your production possibility frontier. This is why, we all enjoy tremendous wealth from living in society. We can trade with other people, so we can specialize in producing what we're good at and trade with other people who are good at other things. And then therefore everyone gets to, sort of have more of everything than we could if we just relied on sort of our own talents. And this is sort of the standard way that we think about this, right? Trade makes it so that all of us can have more of everything. And that's true. I don't want to dispute that. But what I do want to try to perhaps call into question here is the shape of that production possibilities frontier. So we normally draw it as if it looks like this, which says, hey, you're really good at both X and Y, and which one you end up specializing in depends on what we call the relative price. Right? It was that red straight line that sloped down in our previous picture. But I want to challenge that at least a little bit. I want to say, we still have X and Y, our two goods, but because of how specialized we all are in today's society, I don't think it's accurate to draw a production possibilities frontier for an individual that looks like this. I think it makes more sense to draw one that looks more like this, okay? And what this says is that we're really good, in this case, at whatever Y is, and we're okay, let's just use X as all other goods, right? So in this case, for me, Y is going to be doing or making economics, right? So I can teach economics, I can research, I can do all these other things. This is basically my job, okay? And your job would be whatever your job is, that would be on the Y-axis here, and X would be all other things that you could do, but perhaps you're not all that good at, right? For me, this would be cooking, cleaning, maybe maybe daycare for my son, all those things. Can I cook? Yeah, but I'm not very good at it. Can I clean? Yeah, but I'm not very good at it. Can I watch my son? Yeah, but other people are probably better at it than I am, okay? And so normally what we can do is we can go to work and we can produce basically all the way up to here, where all we're really doing is we're producing whatever it is that our job is, and then we can trade along a relative price line and we end up consuming probably closer down to here, okay? And so what this means is we get to consume a lot of all other things and very little of what we actually produce, okay? Now, in my case, my job is fun. It is at some level consumptive. So, this isn't a perfect picture for people who have a fun job. But for other people who perhaps, you can think of people who work at a restaurant, they're going to make a lot of food over the course of the day, and they're probably not going to eat a whole lot of it, right? Or people who are in landscaping for a career, they're going to cut a lot of grass, but they're not cutting their own grass all that much, okay? And so you have this situation where everyone in society produces a lot of stuff, right? Where our production is really high in terms of this one good, but our consumption, right? Basically, we sell all of our production and then we consume, for the most part, completely different things. Now, what's happened as a result of coronavirus? Now, and I should also put an indifference curve on here, just so that we can see what's going on. So because of trade and specialization, we get to be on this indifference curve that's way beyond our production possibilities frontier. Okay. Now, because of quarantine, we are not able to trade, right? We're not able to trade with these people as much as we might wish to. Okay, so we end up not being able to trade with people, and I should fill this back in, and I'll put that dot there, okay? We can't trade. We can't go to work, which means we can't sell our things. And so now if I take this indifference curve here and I try to move it like parallel to the left here, or parallel like diagonally down and left, I'm going to get something that looks maybe like this, where we're doing, in my case, we're doing a lot more of, or consuming rather, a lot more of what we enjoy. So I get to, excuse me, I get to read more economics books and all that good stuff, but I don't get to enjoy the tremendous wealth of the specialization and gains from trade from other people. So now, because of this lack of trading with one another, I now have to basically produce all these things over here myself, right? So I can no longer hire, a babysitter or a daycare, right? I have to do that myself. I can no longer hire someone to mow my lawn, right? I have to do that. I have to take my dog out, right? I have to work as my own IT, right? So if I have a problem, or if my wife has a problem with some sort of IT issue at home, I have to solve that, or we have to solve that, right? I can no longer go out to restaurants, right? And I should put an asterisk because there are curbside pickup, but it's not the same as going to the restaurant and doing all that. Okay, so I can no longer rely on other people to cook for me, right? I can no longer produce economics or value as an economics instructor and exchange that value for food, right? So all these things, because of all these that we are now forced to do, which these are all in that like x-axis that we were talking about down here, okay? Because of my inability to hire someone to do all of these things for me, right? I now have to do them myself. And because of that, I am able to consume less of all other things, which makes me less happy, right? So now we are on a lower indifference curve, which means we are less happy. So this is like one way of perhaps thinking about how coronavirus and the subsequent quarantine has affected us, right? Through the use of production possibilities frontiers and indifference curves.